For months, the loudest voices in sports media treated Shedeur Sanders like an unfinished project. Someone who needed time, someone who wasn't ready, someone who didn't belong in the same conversation as the top rookies in his class. And leading that charge were analysts like Dan Orlovsky and Tony Grossi, two men who seemed almost eager to dismiss everything Shedeur brought to the table. They questioned his maturity, doubted his arm talent, and mocked his interviews before he ever took an NFL snap. But then something happened that changed the entire tone of the conversation. The film finally spoke for itself. And when Shedeur stepped onto the field against Tennessee and delivered a performance that looked nothing like the player they spent months tearing down, those same critics suddenly found themselves scrambling for cover. The excuses disappeared, the sarcasm vanished, and the tone shifted from dismissive to apologetic almost overnight. Dan Orlovsky, once convinced Shedeur couldn't succeed at this level, was suddenly praising him as the best quarterback option for the Browns. He broke down plays frame by frame, highlighting poise and precision he once claimed the rookie didn't have. Tony Grossi, a longtime critic, reversed course just as quickly, calling Shedeur the clear choice moving forward after watching him carve up a defense in crunch time. Their reversal wasn't subtle. It wasn't gradual. It was immediate, because the truth left them no wiggle room. When a quarterback delivers under pressure the way Shedeur did, the narrative collapses. The old takes crumble, and even the most stubborn critics are forced to admit they were wrong. Shedeur didn't silence them with words. He silenced them with performance. And once the tape exposed the truth, the critics had no choice but to expose themselves. Before Dan Orlovsky became one of Shedeur Sanders' loudest supporters, he was one of them. Voices trying hardest to convince the world that Shedeur wasn't ready for the NFL. And it wasn't just a casual critique. Orlovsky's early comments hit with a tone that felt personal, sharper, harsher, and more dismissive than anything he said about the other rookie quarterbacks in this class. He questioned Shedeur's mechanics, doubted his decision-making, and insisted multiple times that his style wouldn't translate. To some fans, it almost sounded like Orlovsky was waiting for Shedeur to fail, just so he could say, "I told you so." What made it even stranger was how confidently Orlovsky spoke despite having very little real NFL tape to evaluate. Most analysts gave Shedeur the benefit of the doubt. Orlovsky did the opposite. He amplified every negative narrative he could find. Reports at the time suggested he wasn't alone. Some insiders quietly claimed certain analysts believed the Colorado hype wave around the Sanders family was bigger than Shedeur's actual NFL ability, and Orlovsky seemed to latch onto that storyline early. Instead of breaking down the film, he fixated on things like interviews, tone, and personality. He dissected Shedeur's preseason comments as if they were red flags, treating natural confidence like arrogance. He argued that Shedeur didn't act like an NFL quarterback yet, as if charisma and swagger somehow disqualified him from playing the position. None of it had anything to do with the real game. But when the season finally arrived, the narrative he built started cracking almost instantly. The plays Orlovsky dismissed as college concepts showed up on Sundays with even sharper execution. The poise he doubted became Shedeur's defining trait. The throws he labeled concerning turned into the very clips he would later praise as elite. And once the film contradicted his talking points, his narrative had nowhere to go. The backlash wasn't subtle either. Fans called out how quickly his analysis unraveled. Other analysts questioned how he missed what was so obvious. And Orlovsky, a man who prides himself on film study, suddenly found himself on the wrong side of the tape. That's when everything shifted. The critic became the admirer. The skeptic became the validator. The same voice that once doubted Shedeur now breaks down his plays like they're masterclass examples of quarterbacking. Because once the truth shows up on film, even the loudest agendas fall apart. Everything changed the moment Shedeur Sanders stepped onto the field against the Tennessee Titans, because for the first time, the world finally saw what the Browns had been ignoring and what the critics refused to acknowledge. This wasn't a rookie trying to survive. This was a quarterback taking control of a game with a level of calm that veterans spend a decade trying to master. The Titans game wasn't just a good performance. It was the turning point that exposed how wildly off-target the pre-draft narratives had been. From the opening drive, Shedeur played with a rhythm that immediately disrupted Tennessee's defense. He processed the field faster than anyone expected, sliding in the pocket with this almost effortless smoothness and firing throws into windows that analysts had claimed he couldn't hit. Every snap told the same story. The moment was never too big for him. And when the Titans turned up the pressure, that's when Shedeur looked his best. The play that sent shockwaves across the NFL came late in the game. An off-platform throw under collapsing pressure that should have been impossible. Yet Shedeur made it look routine. His timing was perfect, his footwork was clean, and his anticipation was unreal. Even the broadcast slowed the replay down to highlight how advanced the read was. And the second that clip hit social media, everything started shifting. Dan Orlovsky, who had spent months questioning whether Shedeur's game would translate, ended up calling that exact throw one of the best he's ever seen from any quarterback. Not any rookie, any quarterback. That's the kind of statement analysts normally reserve for all pro players, not someone starting one of his first games in the league. The Titans game exposed a truth that couldn't be denied. Shedeur wasn't just surviving NFL speed. He was controlling it. He wasn't just keeping the Browns in the game. He was carrying them. 2 late-game touchdown drives sent a message to every critic watching. This kid wasn't hype, wasn't narrative, wasn't a product of his last name. He was the real thing. And once those throws started circulating online, the apologies began. The tone changed. The narrative collapsed. Because after the Titans game, there was no room left for doubt. But the apology tour was only getting started. After the Titans game, the shift in Dan Orlovsky's tone wasn't subtle. He didn't just walk back his old takes, he sprinted away from them. For months, he'd positioned himself as one of the loudest skeptics, confidently breaking down Shedeur's supposed weaknesses. But once the film exposed a completely different quarterback from the one he imagined, Orlovsky had no choice but to confront the reality he'd been avoiding. And to his credit, he did something not every analyst is willing to do. He publicly admitted he was wrong. His breakdown that aired the following day felt almost surreal. This wasn't the same Orlovsky who once questioned Shedeur's maturity and mechanics. This version was enthusiastic, borderline amazed, pausing frame by frame as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He highlighted Shedeur's anticipation throws, his timing against pressure, the way he manipulated the defense with his eyes. He spoke about Shedeur with a tone usually reserved for established stars, not rookies still finding their footing. But the comment that truly stunned everyone came when Orlovsky called one of Shedeur's under-pressure throws the best I've seen from any quarterback. Not from a rookie, not from a mid-tier passer, from any quarterback. That kind of statement carries weight, especially from someone who's made a career analyzing the position. Suddenly, the same analyst who once nitpicked everything about Shedeur was labeling him Cleveland's best option at quarterback moving forward. Fans didn't miss the irony either. Social media lit up with reactions pointing out how quickly Orlovsky switched sides. Some said he was trying to stay ahead of the narrative. Others joked that he performed the fastest backpedal in ESPN history. But regardless of the motivation, one thing was undeniable. Shedeur's performance forced Orlovsky to reevaluate everything he thought he knew. Whether the apology came from genuine respect or fear of being exposed as wrong doesn't change the impact. The criticism is dead, the doubt is gone. And the analyst who once dismissed Shedeur's potential is now building arguments for why he's the Browns' future. But Orlovsky wasn't the only critic scrambling to rewrite history. One of Shedeur's longest-standing skeptics was about to flip even harder. And this turn surprised everyone watching. If Dan Orlovsky's apology shocked people, Tony Grossi's reversal practically caused an earthquake. Grossi wasn't just a critic. He was one of the loudest voices pushing the idea that Shedeur Sanders wasn't ready, wasn't tough enough, and wasn't capable of leading an NFL offense. For months, he dismissed everything Shedeur did, from his interviews to his practice habits, acting like no amount of talent could ever outweigh his doubts. And when Shedeur mentioned soreness during camp, Grossi pounced on it instantly, using it as fuel to question his durability. It wasn't constructive criticism, it felt personal. But then came Sunday, and everything Grossi had been saying suddenly collapsed under the weight of Shedeur's performance. By the time the final whistle blew in the Titans game, Grossi had no choice but to address what he'd just watched. A rookie quarterback dragging the Browns out of deficit after deficit with composure most veterans struggle to maintain. For the first time, Grossi spoke about Shedeur without sarcasm or dismissiveness. Instead, he acknowledged what the entire league was seeing. Shedeur didn't just survive adversity, he embraced it. He emphasized the poise Shedeur showed in the fourth quarter, especially during the 2 touchdown drives that nearly stole the game back for Cleveland. For a critic who once questioned whether Shedeur belonged in the NFL, hearing Grossi admit the rookie passed the test was a moment fans never expected to witness. And make no mistake, this wasn't a half-hearted compliment. Grossi openly stated that Shedeur had outperformed Dillon Gabriel, the quarterback he once defended so fiercely. The shift didn't stop there. Grossi even went as far as suggesting that Shedeur could become the Browns' long-term franchise quarterback. That sentence alone marked the biggest pivot of his career. For someone who rarely walks back harsh statements, this was borderline shocking. And while some viewers felt Grossi was simply trying to stay ahead of the narrative, others believed the performance genuinely forced him to reconsider what he thought he knew. Regardless of his motives, the outcome was the same. Grossi joined the growing list of experts who underestimated Shedeur, only to reverse course once the facts became impossible to ignore. But Grossi's flip signaled something much bigger than media humility. It marked the moment when even the harshest critics realized this wasn't hype. It was the beginning of Shedeur Sanders rewriting the future of the Browns. The wave of analysts suddenly changing their tone raises an obvious question. How did so many football experts get Shedeur Sanders so wrong in the first place? It wasn't just 1 or 2 commentators. A large portion of the media dismissed him long before he ever stepped onto an NFL field, creating a narrative that collapsed the moment he finally got his chance. And when you look deeper, it becomes clear that their misjudgment wasn't really about his talent. It was about everything surrounding him. For one, Shedeur entered the league carrying far more noise than the typical rookie. His last name alone drew attention. Being the son of Deion Sanders meant every move was magnified, every interview was dissected, and every mistake, real or imagined, became headline material. Critics weren't evaluating only Shedeur the quarterback. They were reacting to the spotlight that came with him. Some analysts, intentionally or not, allowed that glare to cloud their objectivity. Then there was the narrative fatigue. For 2 college seasons, fans and media couldn't take their eyes off the Sanders family. It created a strange dynamic where some analysts wanted to be the ones who kept it real by pushing back against the hype. They positioned themselves as the voices of reason, assuming the safe bet was to downplay Shedeur's potential. But in trying so hard to appear unbiased, they ended up being the most biased voices in the room. Another factor was the style of player Shedeur is. He isn't built like the traditional dual-threat quarterback people expected. He wins with anticipation, timing, accuracy, and calm. Traits that don't always pop on highlight reels, but dominate on film. Analysts who rely on quick impressions instead of actual tape study completely miss the subtleties of his game. They mistook quiet confidence for immaturity and patience in the pocket for hesitation. And finally, there was Cleveland's own internal messaging. Reports, whispers, and preseason narratives painted Shedeur as unprepared, disengaged, or lacking NFL traits. Analysts absorbed those talking points without questioning the source, repeating them until they sounded like facts. Only now are many of those same insiders admitting those stories were exaggerated or flat out wrong. In the end, Shedeur didn't just prove the critics wrong. He exposed how shallow their evaluations were. He showed that real talent doesn't need hype to survive, and real quarterbacks don't crumble under pressure. They rise. But this wasn't just misjudgment. What came next revealed something far more intentional. If there's one part of Shedeur Sanders' rise that even his critics can't ignore anymore, it's how dramatically he's grown as a leader. What the world is seeing now didn't happen by accident. It happened because Shedeur was preparing long before he ever earned the starting job. Long before the Browns even bothered to call his name. People forget this. While he was buried at fourth string, while others were getting reps he earned in camp, Shedeur wasn't sulking. He was studying. He was taking detailed notes. Coaches, teammates, and even analysts who doubted him have all admitted the same thing. Shedeur works like someone obsessed with getting better. Even when he wasn't getting first-team snaps, he was memorizing protections, absorbing route concepts, and learning defensive tendencies like a veteran. That kind of discipline is rare in young quarterbacks, and it's one of the reasons his breakout looks so effortless now. But what's even more impressive is his composure. Most rookies panic in collapsing pockets. Most rookies let adversity shake them. Shedeur does the opposite. His calmness is so natural that analysts like Dan Orlovsky, who once dismissed him, are now using words like elite poise and NFL-level processing to describe his game. That shift didn't happen because Shedeur suddenly got better. It happened because he finally got the chance to show the work he'd been doing all along. Leadership showed up in another way too. How the locker room responded to him. Veteran players don't rally behind rookies unless they see something real. And the moment Shedeur stepped onto the field, the energy changed. The offense moved differently. The huddle felt different. Players trusted him, not because of hype or headlines, but because he earned their confidence with preparation, intelligence, and a level of maturity far beyond his age. Even in tough moments, like being told he would be redshirted or being treated like an afterthought in the depth chart, he never lashed out. He never attacked the coaching staff publicly. He stayed professional, patient, and focused, qualities that separate franchise quarterbacks from everyone else. And that's what makes this story so compelling. Shedeur didn't just fight through unfair treatment, he outgrew it. He turned doubt into fuel, setbacks into lessons, and disrespect into a platform to lead. His rise isn't just about talent. It's about the discipline, mindset, and leadership that were there long before the world noticed. But as powerful as this growth is, it still doesn't explain why the agenda lasted so long or who benefited from it. What's happening now is almost ironic. The same voices that once tore Shedeur Sanders apart are suddenly scrambling to be the first to praise him. Analysts who once called him overhyped, unpolished, or not NFL ready are now delivering breakdowns that sound like they've been fans from the beginning. It's a complete reversal, and one that exposes how quickly narratives shift when the truth becomes impossible to deny. You can see it everywhere. Dan Orlovsky, who questioned Shedeur's mechanics and even mocked his interviews, is now spotlighting the very traits he once dismissed. He's breaking down Shedeur's footwork, praising his processing, and highlighting throws he calls high-level NFL stuff. This isn't subtle praise. This is a full-on pivot from skepticism to admiration. And the reason is simple. Shedeur's performance left him no other choice. Ignoring what happened on the field would have made him look out of touch. Tony Grossi is another example. For months, he brushed off Shedeur's upside and nitpicked everything from SAR comments to preseason reps. Yet now, after watching Sanders command the offense, lead comeback drives, and display real poise in critical moments, Grossi is advocating for him as the Browns' long-term option. It's not a mild shift. It's a complete reversal of his entire position. But here's the part people need to understand. Analysts don't flick this hard unless they feel pressure. The pressure of public opinion shifting. The pressure of being on the wrong side of story that's unfolding in real time. And the pressure of needing to stay relevant when their old narratives crumble in front of millions of viewers. No critic wants to be the one who doubted the next great quarterback. No analyst wants to be remembered as the person who said he'll never make it right before he takes over the league. So now they're racing to reposition themselves, not just to praise Shedeur, but to align with the new reality he created. The funny thing, Shedeur never asked for any of this. He didn't chase the spotlight. He didn't fire back at critics. He simply played and forced the football world to adjust. That's what true difference makers do. They shift the conversation without saying a word. But while critics scramble to rewrite their takes, one question still lingers. Where were all these compliments when he needed a fair shot the most? When you look at everything that's unfolded, from the preseason doubt to the harsh doubt, commentary to the sudden wave of praise, it becomes clear that Shedeur Sanders didn't just silence his critics. He reshaped the entire conversation around what a young quarterback is capable of when he refuses to bend under pressure. What makes his rise even more compelling is that none of it came easy. He wasn't handed the starting job. He wasn't embraced immediately. He wasn't treated like a future franchise player. Instead, he walked into a league full of noise, skepticism, and analysts waiting for him to slip, and still managed to outgrow every prediction made about him. The shift in tone across the NFL landscape speaks volumes. Analysts who once dismissed him are now breaking down his mechanics with admiration. Reporters who questioned his toughness or maturity are now highlighting his leadership and composure. Even former players are admitting that Shedeur is operating with a level of calm they didn't expect to see from someone this early in his career. That kind of transformation doesn't happen because of one good game. It happens when a player consistently proves he belongs. And yet, the story isn't finished. If anything, this is just the beginning. Shedeur now faces a gauntlet of elite quarterbacks, players who define the modern NFL. Every matchup will test him, push him, and ultimately reveal just how high his ceiling is. But here's the difference. He's no longer stepping into these moments as the doubted rookie. He's stepping into them as someone who earned the respect of the league the hard way, through performance, through poise, and through refusing to fold when the narrative tried to box him in. So, has Shedeur officially silenced the NFL? Not entirely, because the great ones don't silence people with one season. They silence them with careers. What he has done is force the world to pay attention. He's taken control of the narrative that others tried to write for him. And he's proving week by week that he's not here to be a placeholder. He's here to build something lasting. The real question now isn't whether Shedeur is legit. It's how far he's about to go, and how many doubters will end up rewriting history to pretend they always believed in him.